Good evening, everybody. This is your favorite aspiring classicist here, a wandering author, reminding you that we're all the authors of our own lives. As always, my message remains the same: spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. And today we're going to finish up Book 7, Chapter 4, where Aristotle discusses the objects of restraint. Now, remember, restraint is a virtue that's kind of like temperance, but it's more like self-control. And in Book 7 in particular, he's really looking at the opposite of the virtues, the vices. And for this, it's unrestrained. Basically somebody who doesn't have control over themselves. They may know the right things to do, but they do not, they're unable to follow through on their decisions mentally. They'll yield to temptation, which makes them similar to profligates. But the big difference between them is that the profligate acts from choice, whereas the unrestrained man does not. He's acting against his own will. But what exactly is he acting on? What are the objects? What is the object of restraint? So let's see what Aristotle has to say. We must next discuss whether any man can be called unrestrained without qualification, or whether it must always be in relation to certain particular things, and if so, to what sort of things. Now it is plain that men are self-restrained and enduring, unrestrained and soft in regards to pleasure and pain. So, unrestraint and softness has to do with pleasure and pain. But things that give pleasure are of two kinds. Some are necessary, others are desirable in themselves, but admit of excess. So there's the necessary sources of pleasure are those connected with the body. I mean such as the functions of nutrition and sex. In fact, those bodily functions which we have indicated as the spheres of profligacy and temperance. The other sources of pleasure are not necessary, but are desirable in themselves. I mean, for example, victory, honor, wealth, and the other good and pleasant things of the same sort. So we only call people unrestrained with qualification in regard to the latter class of pleasant things. But of those who exceed in relation to the bodily enjoyments, with regard to which we spoke of men as temperate or profligate, he who pursues excessive pleasure and avoids the extremes of bodily pains, such as hunger, heat, cold, and the various pains of touch and taste, not from choice, but against his own choice and reason, is described as unrestrained, not without a qualification. So if you try to avoid any kind of discomfort at all, and you're constantly chasing pleasures, particularly bodily pleasures such as food and sex, then Aristotle says you're just unrestrained, without any kind of qualification on it. You're unrestrained. A proof that unrestrained, unqualified denotes unrestraint as regards bodily pleasures and pains is that we speak of men as soft, who yield to these. I guess Aristotle doesn't like guys who are soft. And hence we class the unrestrained man with the profligate, but not those who yield to anger or the like, because unrestraint and profligacy are related to the same pleasures and pains. But as a matter of fact, although they are related to the same things, they are not related to them in the same way. The profligate acts from choice, the unrestrained man does not. Hence, we should pronounce a man who pursues excessive pleasures and avoids moderate pains when he feels only weak desires, or none at all, to be more profligate than one who does so owing to intense desires. So it's less yielding to your desires, especially if you're trying to resist them, is less blameworthy in Aristotle's eyes if you have intense desires rather than weak desires. If you're yielding only to weak desires, then Aristotle thinks you're soft. And inasmuch as some desires and pleasures relate to things that are noble and good in kind, for instance, money, gain, victory, and honor, men are not blamed merely for regarding or desiring or liking them, but for doing so in a certain way, namely to excess. So Aristotle doesn't blame you for liking money, gain, victory, or honor. Those are good things to like, but if you do it to excess, then there's an issue. Well then, there cannot be any actual vice in relation to these things, because as has been said, each of them is in itself desirable. By nature, although excessive devotion to them is bad and to be avoided. So being too in love with money and honor and victory, honor is kind of like popularity for the Greeks. Being excessively devoted to those is a bad thing and to be avoided, but it's not the same thing as an actual vice. And similarly, there cannot be unrestraint either, since that is not merely to be avoided, but actually blameworthy. Though people do use the term in these matters with a qualification, unrestraint in whatever it may be, because the affection does resemble unrestraint proper. So people that are too in love with money, gain, victory, and honor, they may look like an unrestrained man in some sense, but it is different than people who are unrestrained in regards to bodily pleasures. It's kind of like how we might call a bad doctor bad, but we don't mean that they're a bad person, only that they're bad in practicing medicine or whatever it is. But yeah, that's chapter 4. So we're going to do another one here in a minute, and he's going to discuss, let's see here, bestiality. Yeah, let's see what Aristotle thinks about bestial characters. As always, my message remains the same. Spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. What are y'all doing in order to inspire, uplift, and empower your local community today? Because this world isn't changing unless we all do our part. You can count on me to do mine daily. Till next time, I love y'all.